Accessing. Hello, I'm Annika, aka Pixie, and you are listening to the Endless Anakin playlist podcast, in which I use popular music as a frame to discuss anything and everything Star Wars and Star Wars adjacent. This episode is inspired by the song Lux Aeterna, composed by Clint Mansell for the film Requiem for a Dream, and performed by the Kronos Quartet. Last time, I promised something a little more lighthearted after 3 weeks of trauma. Star Wars is more of a tragedy than it first appears, but still. There's also fun. So I put up a poll, and it was actually very close. This topic only won by 1 vote. And anybody who voted for pod racing or sex, don't worry, I'll get to those. I'll get to everything. That's the whole point of this endeavor. But Camelot won my poll. So that's today's topic. And it's something I feel I could give a TED Talk with no preparation on. So that's kind of what this is. Arthurian overtones show up right away in the first Star Wars film, Episode 4, A New Hope. There are references to knights and wizards, quests and royalty. Luke is literally given a sword and a destiny. And Obi-Wan describes the past in an idyllic light. For over 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic. He calls the lightsaber an elegant weapon for a more civilized age. Then the prequels really tease out and cement the idea. Our characters are living in that civilized, elegant age. There's a whole order of knights who were ruled by a council of nobles, the masters, who sit in a circle just like King Arthur and his round table. The order lived by a strict code of conduct, and their dedication to the kingdom, the Republic, is only surpassed by their dedication to a higher power, the Force. They practice compassion and courtly love and consider themselves defenders, not soldiers. The temple also holds a library and a school. A love of history and their pursuit of knowledge for knowledge's sake are integral to their program. Jedi Knights train younglings and Padawans as their medieval equivalent train pages and squires. They must perform a series of tasks to be promoted, and they engage in diplomacy. The Jedi and the Knights are keepers of the peace, who only go to battle as a last resort to preserve their morality and protect the innocent. Yet in both stories, they are nearly always at war. The dissonance between their ideals and their reality amplifies and hastens their destruction. In both cases, their enemy twists truths, uses their ideals against them, and recasts heroes as villains. Their kingdom is thrown into darkness and destruction by the forbidden relationship between their greatest and most noble knight and the Queen. Also, the Clone Wars introduced Mortis and is expanded to the world between worlds in Star Wars Rebels. That entire concept is extremely Arthurian, right down to the stained glass art. But I'm going to have a whole episode on Mortis because it's one of my favorite things in all of Star Wars. And then in the sequels, again, Rey is presented with a sword and a quest and required to learn the ways of the knights of old so she may conquer evil. In her final battle against Palpatine, Rey becomes the perfect knight, a vessel for the past and a weapon of purity and goodness. Her cross sabers are sword and shield and resemble the symbols of Arthurian Christianity. She is literally fighting the undead and the unclean in a place created by dark magic, and her name means king. Let's talk about the sword. The Skywalker Legacy lightsaber has come to hold the same significance to the Skywalker Saga as Excalibur has to Arthurian legend. When Arthur pulls the sword from the stone, he proves to be a true king and heir to the throne. In other accounts, he receives Excalibur from the Lady of the Lake in exchange for a boon. Both of these scenes are reproduced in The Force Awakens, with Rey in the Arthur role. First, she is offered the saber by Maz Kanata, and later she plucks it out of the ground. While Luke, Finn, and Ben also wield Anakin's lightsaber, it is shown to choose Rey, first through her vision on Takodana, and then in the Forest of Ilum when it flies to her, despite the presence and power of Anakin's grandson. After the battle on Exegol, Rey buries the lightsaber in the sand of Tatooine, which is not unlike Excalibur being returned to the lake after Arthur's death. Analogues of Arthurian characters appear and recur in all three trilogies. Merlin is best represented by Yoda. He's a hermit in the woods, a powerful wizard, has premonitions, speaks in riddles, is hundreds of years old, and is everyone's teacher. But Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Luke all also play the part of Merlin at certain points. Anakin, Luke, and Rey all have parallels to Arthur within their origin stories. Anakin and Rey are servants, Luke and Rey are orphans, none of them know their lineage, all grow up poor, all three are found through coincidence that becomes fate. They're chosen, they're legend, and they all wield that same magic sword. Obi-Wan also gets to play the part of Arthur in relation to Anakin and Padme as Lancelot and Guinevere. All stories of King Arthur and the Round Table end with Camelot's fall, and most include the forbidden romance between Queen Guinevere and Sir Lancelot as a main precursor. My favorite written version of Camelot is The Once and Future King by T.H. White. It's the basis for the musical Camelot and the Disney film The Sword and the Stone, and is in turn an adaptation of Le Mort d'Arthur, or The Death of Arthur, by Thomas Malory. The Once and Future King includes 4 or sometimes 5 novellas, and my favorite is the third, concerned with Lancelot, entitled The Ill-Made Knight. I think that is such a perfect epithet for Anakin Skywalker. The Ill-Made Knight. White's Lancelot is described as someone extraordinary, the type to, quote, spend half his life torturing himself by trying to discover what was right, so as to conquer his inclination towards what was wrong, unquote. Well, that sounds like a struggle against the dark side to me. Like Anakin, Lance is powerful, passionate, and heroic, but also anxious and insecure. He struggles with the burden of his promise and the depth of his feelings for the Queen. And the King, too. White adds complexity to all sides of the love triangle, and I'd argue Lucas does too. They all three love each other, too much to risk acknowledging it, which, of course, dooms them and their kingdom. Dark forces work against the trio, Guinevere's life is threatened, and Lancelot battles through an army of his friends and peers to save her. As Anakin is both Arthur and Lancelot, Padme is both Guinevere and Elaine, or Elaine's, as there are 2 in Lancelot's story. Elaine of Astolat, who is also known as the Lady of Shalott, and Elaine of Corbinic, or Corban, the daughter of King Pelles. Both Elaines love Lancelot to an unhealthy degree and die of a broken heart. Padme's funeral dress, often likened to Shakespeare's Ophelia, at least by me, also references Elaine of Astolat, who was laid in a small boat after her death, surrounded by flowers, and floated to Camelot. Playing on their like names, White gives Elaine of Corban the same funeral scene. This has been depicted by a wide swath of artists, as well as in poetry, play, and music. Padme's meadow picnic dress similarly draws clear parallels to paintings of Guinevere and Arthurian romance. I've written about it as part of my ongoing Padme fashion project, an analysis of her costuming, and I'll include a link in the show notes. Lancelot and Elaine of Corban have a child together, Galahad, who is the pure knight that Lancelot always strived to be. Galahad succeeds in the quest for the Holy Grail, which cements him as the most virtuous of knights, the one who best embodies Arthurian ideals like courage, honesty, gentleness, chivalry, and faith. Like Galahad, Luke achieves the greatness his father gives up for love of a woman. According to legend, Galahad never dies but ascends to heaven, which is reminiscent of Jedis becoming one with the Force, particularly Luke. Mordred is the traditional villain in Arthurian legend. though there are old accounts and new retellings that cast him in a more heroic light. He is most often portrayed as Arthur's bastard son with his half-sister Morgause, though sometimes he is a nephew or even Guinevere's brother. In any case, Mordred takes advantage of the illicit relationship between Lancelot and Guinevere and the war that ensues to seize the throne for himself. Ultimately, Mordred is killed by Arthur, but not before fatally wounding the king. Ben Solo is a somewhat sympathetic take on Mordred. He is a descendant, but not heir. He kills his father and goes to war with his family. Like Luke, Arthur attempted to kill a young Mordred when he had a vision of the boy being his, and more importantly his kingdom's downfall due to his blood connection to darkness. Mordred turns to villainy when he learns the truth of his parentage and is prophesied to destroy the kingdom. Mordred, like Ben, chooses to become the monster that is presented as his destiny. I would cast Ahsoka as Gareth, who served as Lancelot's page until he was knighted. Gareth is described as the most honorable of knights. He was killed by Lancelot in the rescue of Guinevere, which set in motion the final war and the fall of Camelot. Lancelot did not recognize Gareth in the battle and mourned him deeply. Ahsoka also shares story beats with the mystical parts of Arthurian legend: Merlin, Nimue, Morgan Le Fay. She disappears into her own legend and acts as a guide for Ezra and Rebels and Grogu in The Mandalorian. Finn shares the most with Percival. Like Gareth and Galahad, Percival is described as one of the most pure knights and achieves a measure of greatness. In earlier tellings, it was Percival, not Galahad, who achieved the Holy Grail. Unlike most Knights of the Round Table, he has humble beginnings and is considered naive. Both Finn's and Percival's stories are a bit muddled, but they share an innate goodness and loyalty. Star Wars is not Camelot in space, but the references in production design, costume, dialogue, and character beats are intentional. I think that is such a perfect epithet of myth and magic, honor and nobility, light and dark. I've often said there are no new stories, just old stories told in new ways. Star Wars and Arthurian legend and adaptations thereof are cyclical by design, and so is this song. Luke's Aeterna is the leitmotif of Requiem for a Dream, a psychological drama about drug addiction. The title is taken from a text in the Requiem or funeral mass of the Roman Catholic Church. It's Latin and translates to eternal light. An orchestral version of the song accompanied the trailer for the second Lord of the Rings film, The Two Towers, and it's since gained wide popularity outside the context of either film. The theme has been used in trailers for numerous media, from NCIS to the Assassin's Creed video game, and advertisements to sell cameras. Sports teams and figure skaters have used the song, and it even made an appearance on So You Think You Can Dance. In other words, it fits many stories. The music is eerie, poignant, repetitive, and has become shorthand for drama. And it shares all of that with the likes of both King Arthur and Anakin Skywalker. Follow my playlists on YouTube and Spotify, and after the episode, the song I've discussed will immediately play. Links can be found at anakin.me. That's ANAKIN.me. Please follow, like, subscribe, and tell all your friends to do the same. See you next time, and may the Force be with you. My single, Robots Don't Cry, is now available on iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, and more. To celebrate the release, I commissioned the artist Danielle Balanqua, who you can find at Balangawa, Balanggawa, on Instagram, to create a series of 10 artworks featuring droids and their best friends. Today's droid is the star of the sequels BB-8, with Poe Dameron. The relationship between Poe and BB is one of the sweetest and purest in all of Star Wars. Their affection for each other leaps off the screen in every scene. Moreover, BB bonds with Finn and with Rey too, making more of an argument for their trio than the whole rest of the films did. BB is present when Rey's journey begins, on Jakku and again on Takodana, and when we last see her in the final frame of The Rise of Skywalker. But it's Poe who BB shares the closest friendship with. Enjoy the art, and please, give Robots Don't Cry a listen.